Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces. My thanks, of course, to the organizers, Your Excellencies, Assistant Minister, members, colleagues, hosts. I'm also very, very pleased to see how much younger the audience seems to get every year. Dragan, you're looking much younger this year. You really must tell me where you get these cosmetics. I think they're fantastic. Milan, what can I say? Well, ladies and gentlemen, when I was asked what the title of my presentation was to be, I said, I could talk about all sorts of things. I usually talk complete nonsense on these occasions. I seem to be brought along as the comedy act. But I thought, well, let's talk about the future of mining in Europe. I think the future I'm looking at it, to be honest. I'm looking at you. You are the future of mining in Europe. I could probably just say Serbia is the future of mining in Europe. But we've got to fill the time, so I should tell you a few other things as well. There's such energy in this room. Simeon made a comment about the positivity of the minister's statement. It's true. It's true. There's a clarity, I would say. There's a clarity which is absent in other jurisdictions. We work very hard to find that clarity, to provide it. That's the function of Euromines. We're not really an advertising agency or a lobbying group. What we try and be is a point of reference, not a historical archive. We look to the future. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. Am I allowed to use that? Am I doing anything bad to the system? No, good. It's interesting that if we continue with this idea of looking forward, this is a conference not for 2017, but for 2018. 2018, the year ahead, marks 10 years of the EU's Raw Material Initiative, the RMI, 10 years. Believe it or not, we've actually done some things rather well in that time, and it's very easy to criticize the European Commission and the other institutions, and I will in the course of this presentation. And if there are representatives of the Commission, we can roll our sleeves up and sort it out in the lobby afterwards. But there are some good things to say. There has been political action, positive political action, to access finance, to promote investments that target performance, that exceed and create new regulatory standards. We raise the bar by investing money in the right place. We're making great efforts to make sure that legislation is what one of my colleagues is fond of calling joined up, that we have, if you like, competitiveness proofing, that whatever legislation will originate from the Commission is increasingly vetted to see does it fit in with, for example, the Raw Materials Initiative. You can't fund mining innovation and at the same time fund anti-mining NGOs. We don't do that anymore. It used to happen. More joined up thinking. We're sharing experience. We don't penalize governments whose regulatory capacity needs improvement. Increased cross-fertilization is a very important factor in European mining today. The mining industry stands behind the Commission in the EU climate policy. It's vital to an industry that not only contributes to the climate debate, but is entirely dependent upon energy for its output, whose customers, whose suppliers are completely dependent upon energy pricing, energy availability, and the consequences of that use. So therefore, we see no alternative except to maintain the current emissions trading system, for example. There has been great funding on innovation. I remember an Australian gentleman at this event last year saying, "We don't invent anything, you invent everything." Yeah, Europe is excellent at that. We're in the middle of a project with our colleague, Brendan. Are you here, Brendan Marshall? Good morning. I'm sorry, but you've lost weight. I missed you, I apologize. Brendan's from the Mining Association of Canada, and we are in the middle of a project with themselves and a large commercial entity on behalf of the European Commission. And, excuse me. And the purpose of that project is to look at mineral investment between the EU and Canada. Among the findings of that project so far, and it's ongoing, and I welcome all of the Canadian companies here, to come and look at the website, come look at our website to find links, look at his website to find links, and participate in the debate. We want to hear what you think. But it's very interesting. The Chargé d'Affaires mentioned the paramount status of the Toronto Stock Exchange. 57% of all publicly listed mining companies. Excellent statistic. But if you look at the trade flow, and there are so many suppliers of equipment in this room, the trade flow of equipment, the trade flow of ideas, the trade flow of technology is massively the other way. Europe still very much has a lead in terms of engineering technology, engineering production. The Canadians are much more effective in terms of statistics, in terms of performance, in terms of mining and mining investment. But European innovation, European research and development is a vital component to the economy of the European Union and a vital component to the work that we participate in. Where we fail, and here comes the bad news, is raising citizen awareness. I would say that is the biggest issue. The fact there are so many people in this room, the fact there are so many students in this room, shows a different picture, I believe, here. You face different issues, and I think you're facing them in a constructive way, and I very much applaud that. We need more government programs in the European Union to distinguish between what we consider moral, appropriate, acceptable, and all those words, and what we need. I don't need to make the argument to a gathering like this in terms of what we need for our everyday lives, what future minerals will be required, and so forth. The problem we have in Europe is we have a politically aware, consumer-driven society who's very concerned about recycling, about the environment, very educated. And they are not making the connection between the progress that we've made in our industry, and I repeat, we've made tremendous progress. Our industry is unrecognizable from where it was even 10 years ago. They are not making that linkage. And we all need to do more in order to protect not only our businesses, but our suppliers, our customers, and our investors. And governments need to help us to do that. I think, yes, I could always say we don't need to support job creation in the sector, but I find it a little difficult to say that in this gathering. I think there are plenty of people employed here and plenty of people employed by the companies. What we do need to do is increase our information. And by that, it's a strange thing to say perhaps. Europe's information is not, to use the phrase again, joined up. We don't have proper geological databases that cover the whole of Europe. We don't have the same standards. We don't have mandatory use requirements for competent persons, etc. So we need more predictability. We need greater currency of information. We have mobility of labor, but we don't seem to have very good mobility of information. That would do nothing but benefit Serbia. That's something we need to work on together, to share our techniques. Best practice is a phrase we use a lot. So, sorry, I'm just paraphrasing some of my speech so as I make it a little faster. We need more progress in terms of some of our other initiatives. A terrifying phrase to a lot of people in the industry is Natura 2000. Natura 2000 is basically an environmental set of legislation in terms of protecting areas of specific environmental heritage, wealth, value. We need greater clarity on Natura 2000. Mining is possible in Natura 2000 sites where it is done appropriately, sympathetically, sustainably. We need greater understanding of what is possible. And once that becomes clearer, and it's as simple as translating the directive into all of the languages, believe it or not, there is a lack of simple knowledge of Natura 2000 at some regional levels within the European Union. I find it astonishing to say that, but it's true. And we need a greater recognition of what the industry does with mine sites afterwards. We're actually getting very good at mine site rehabilitation. We can deliver no net loss of ecosystems. We do. There are some companies here, represented in this room, who have absolutely excellent environmental records. The public doesn't know about it. You've got to get out there and tell them about it. There's this perception that mining is old, it belongs in the past, it's dirty, it's nasty, it's invasive, it takes things away. This isn't true. You know this better than I do, but the citizens need to know that we need to remove the fear. And we do that by educating. We need that more skills. We need more, again, mobility, greater capacity. Put this in a context. There are education targets for the EU for the 2020, Horizon 2020. You're probably familiar with that target. There's one or two people, and I think Dominic Roberts is one of them, who participate in the Horizon 2020 project. Yeah. So all of that is part of a much greater effort in terms of raising standards, delivering against clear targets. Raw materials is only a small part of it. Generally, education standards are improving in Europe. We're doing well in terms of climate change. We've reached a 20% reduction in greenhouse gases. 225 billion of new investment in the last 10 years, meeting targets, but not very much in mining. We'd like more, please. But yes, more investment in Europe. Employment levels, not working. We're still about 4% below target. Poverty and raising people away from social exclusion, well, recent election results give us our answers. We're not succeeding there. Research and development, we do very well, but we need to put more money into it. Current policy focuses on issues such as the circular economy. That's fine for us. There's a role for raw materials, for mining in that circular economy. We know that recycling cannot provide for everything this planet needs. It cannot provide for everything that Europe needs. We need primary production. We need sustainable and efficient primary production, however, and you deliver that. Industrial policy at the moment says we need to, and I'm going to quote it exactly, to continue to ensure the secure and sustainable and affordable supply of raw materials. Secure, sustainable, and affordable. We're getting a little more clarity, if you follow my thought. We do that not only by improving our own quality, but by working with others. I mentioned our individual project with the Canadian authorities. Obviously, the greatest trade agreement in modern times, the most innovative trade agreement in modern times, is the CETA. And we're very pleased to be being part of that initial wave of giving meaning to this highly innovative and extremely important agreement, which is one of the reasons why there's so many Canadians in this room. Similar agreements we hope we're having one materialize now with Japan. They are materializing with other jurisdictions. Trade diplomacy is an essential part of what the European Union does. We have alliances with like-minded jurisdictions, so we expand the scope of our thinking. What does that mean? Europe is still the largest market in the world, and the whole of the European continent is what, 600 million people? Something like that. Still the largest market in the world. If we impose standards, if we say this is the way that we want things to be, the rest of the world follows. The largest market will always call the tune. And we do that very successfully, as I think Amazon have just found out as I'm speaking. I haven't heard the verdict, but I haven't heard the detail of it, but I understand it's coming out today. Google were reminded of it. Apple were reminded of it. Interesting that no mining companies have been reminded of these issues, standards. Mining companies meet standards, is my point. Mining companies deliver standards, and we need, I repeat, to tell people more about it. Yes, we need to work on regulatory barriers. We need to constantly modernize. We need to understand what the future has for us. We need to deliver against climate change goals, against sustainable development goals. We are great supporters of the Paris Accord as Euromines. There are lots of initiatives that are supported at a high level by the G7, by OECD, by the United Nations et al. We need to actually give meaning to that. We do have a bright future, of course we do. We're concentrating on what we're good at already, technological change. innovation, research and development, excellent regulatory standards. Our citizens, our customers, our hosts, our regulators demand that. But more importantly now, so do our investors. Investors look for standards that they can compare. It's an area where the mining industry has been really bad at, is comparing its performance to competing demands for investment. So how do you compare a mining company's performance to a tech company's performance as a share? Well, you can do that as a graph, but what underlies that? What does the share price actually reflect? What does the amount of investment that they get actually reflect? There's an increasing amount of work being done by primarily the larger mining companies towards improving transparency of performance, operational efficiency, use of assets, trying to make the industry more intelligible to investors. Mining analysts will not be around, I guarantee you, in the next 10 years. They won't exist. Investment funds are cutting their work on specialist analysis. They're leaving companies to provide data that's comparable. Tech companies do this every day, very easily. Banks do this every day, very easily. Mining companies, you need to compete for investors' money to secure the future, and you are doing great things. But we need to be easily understood. I keep repeating this, more easily understood by our investors, our hosts, our employees, our neighbors. So many companies are already doing that. We innovate so well when it comes to science and engineering. We really do. We need to do it in our business practices also. When people believe in us, when they see what we actually do, mining will have a fantastic future in Europe. Mr. Tomokos, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you an excellent conference. I hope to see you next year.